I think if we were asked, do we want to serve God with all of our heart, we would all respond, of course. We want to serve God. We want to live for God. We want to do so to love Him with all of our heart, our soul, our mind, our strength. And, when we're talking about our wanting to serve God, it should be of utmost priority to us. And, definitely putting God first, serving Him, glorifying Him. But one of the ways that God wants us to serve Him is actually in our serving our fellow man. And specifically today, what we want to talk about and put the spotlight on is how we work in the workplace of the world. Our daily jobs, whatever our employment may be, whatever jobs we may have, whoever it is that is over us, whoever it is that we are serving under, there is a standard that we are called to as Christians in how we go about working and earning a living and working under an employer and even being an employer and having those working under us, whatever situation we may find ourselves in. One of the places we find this is in Ephesians chapter 6 is where we want to go today. Ephesians chapter 6, where Paul specifically talks to bondservants and to masters. And so he says, beginning in verse 5 of Ephesians chapter 6, bondservants, he says, be obedient to those who are your masters according to the flesh. So he's talking about their fleshly work, their servitude, the work that they are having to do as bondservants. He says to be obedient. Obey those who are your masters according to the flesh. With what attitude, what heart does he say? With fear and trembling, the New King James says. In sincerity of heart. And then he tops it all off and drives the point home when he says, as to Christ. Just as if, we're talking about wives and husbands and children and parents, and the emphasis of all of those were, as you do to Christ or in the Lord, pleasing to God. Well, here Paul says that as servants, if we are going to be pleasing to God, then we've got to serve our masters as if we are serving God. Because really we are. His point is we're serving God by serving those men who we find ourselves working for. He says to do so with a heart of fear and trembling, of respect, of authority and obedience. If they are your boss, if they are your employer, that as long as, of course, we're not talking about anything sinful, you've got to obey them. Follow their directions, follow their instructions. Do the work they're calling you to do with a good heart and a good mindset, with sincerity of heart, as if you were working for Christ, doing this for Christ. Not with eye service, verse 6, not as just as men pleasers, not just going through the motions, not just putting up a front, not just, working while the boss is looking or, whatever the case may be. Not with eye service as men pleasers, but as bondservants of Christ. Doing the will of God from the heart. Not just pleasing men, but pleasing God. Do so from the heart, doing the will of God from the heart as bondservants of Christ, with good will doing service, as to the Lord and not to men. So again, he says this work we're doing should come from a heart of goodwill doing this service, again, as to the Lord and not to men. Don't look at it as if you're serving men. Look at it as if in whatever work and position you find yourself in, you're serving God. How can you serve God and do your job well with a good heart and a good mindset? Knowing that whatever good anyone does, he will receive the same from the Lord, whether he is a slave or free. Doing good, being pleasing to God, knowing that your reward is not just that paycheck you're earning every week, every day, every month, whatever the case is. but that you're pleasing God, and God has promised a reward. We will receive good from the Lord, hope from the Lord, because we know we're living for God. And so as employees, as workers, as servants, this is huge, because it is easy for us to, and especially depending on our jobs, right? Depending on the work, the employment we have, not all jobs may be what we want them to be, But whatever job we find ourselves in, we need to do it to the best of our ability for God, not just for men, not being men pleasers, but pleasing God, doing good from the heart, working hard, doing good, being a good example, being honest, being true, being sincere, serving God. Well, then he also has a note that, what about those who find themselves in a position of authority over certain workers and servants? What about these masters? Well, there's a standard for them too. And you masters, do the same things to them. So when we're talking about with sincerity of heart and goodwill, serving God, doing good, masters are to have that same attitude towards their servants, giving up threatening. As a boss, as an employer, you shouldn't be threatening and mistreating people or disrespecting people. Knowing that our own master is in heaven. All of us, our master is in heaven, whether we're an employee or an employer. Our master is in heaven, and there is no partiality with him. So whether we find ourselves in a position of authority, as a boss, as an employer, as a master, or maybe we find ourselves in a position as an employee, a worker, a servant, all of us need to be doing what we're doing it to the best of our ability with sincerity of heart, working hard, working as if we're serving the Lord, because we are. It may not seem like it. But Paul's point is, whatever we do as Christians in the workplace, may we do so with a godly heart, with focusing on God, doing the will of God from the heart, and sincerity of heart, respect, obedience, loving one another. Do good in whatever it is you're doing, and serve God in it, whatever that may be. May we all continue to work on this, continue to improve on this, and grow in this. And maybe it would help us, especially in the jobs and the works that maybe aren't our favorite. Maybe we have a job that, isn't our favorite. Maybe it's not what we want to do full time. But we should still rejoice in it, be thankful for it, serve God, do good, do the best we can in whatever work we find ourselves. Do it for God, not just for men, not just for a paycheck. Do it for God to the best of your ability. God bless.